love changes over time because there are some years where there's not a lot of adult to adult intimacy. And you kind of have to, you're like a camel. You kind of have to get by on what you stored in the tank. And if there's not a lot in the tank, there's not a lot to go on.
Hello and welcome. I'm Master Certified Matchmaker and Dating Coach Genevieve Gresset, and today I'm speaking with Dr. Avrum Weiss. He's a psychologist and he's also a speaker and award-winning author of Hidden in Plain Sight. So Avrum, I was reading your article in Psychologist today, The Value of an Old-Fashioned Marriage, and it really resonated so deeply. Our views on love aren't static, and they grow, they change as we age and we move into new seasons in our lives. And in the article, you shared how your marriage has changed when you and your wife moved to Maine. And I'd love you to share with us what shifted and what changed for you both when you entered your new season in life.
Well, it's an interesting time to be having this conversation. I was just sharing with you, I turned 70 yesterday.
Many congratulations. Happy birthday.
Thank you. So it's interesting, as I'm speaking, I'm imagining who's listening, because of course, when I was in my 20s and 30s, I was certain that I knew everything. And now that I'm 70, the older I get, I had a colleague who used to say in greeting to me every day, "What do you know?" And I started answering as I got older, I started answering less and less. And I think it's true that the older I get, the less I think I know. And so the certainty of my youth has been replaced by the uncertainty of older age. And so I think that's actually been very helpful in terms of relationships. I think a lot of the conflict in my youth came from the butting of heads that came from two people who were so certain that we knew what was right. Mm-hmm. And I think I'm much more likely now to pause and listen to someone else because I'm not so sure that I'm right. And I'm much more likely to listen and believe that somebody else may have something equally important to add to the conversation. Clearly not what's happening in this country politically, probably not your country either.
No, but I think what you're saying makes sense. And I'm wondering if that's just related to you because of the work you do and because of who you are as a person. I know when we work in sort of a therapeutic sense, we're far more mindful of other people and about life. And this is something, but when we're talking to everyday folk as well, do you think that's something that they're aware of, or do you think there's this attitude of, I know it all at this age?
I hope so. I wish so. I'd like to think it has more to do with age than my profession. I'd like to think it has to do with maturity and experience. I'd like to think it's because I've just had more experience in life of seeing that I wasn't right, of seeing that what I thought was true. I've had this conversation. Somebody asked me recently, well, they said to me, here's what's going to happen in the next election. Don't you agree? And I was like, no, I don't. And it's not that I think I know what's going to happen. It's that what I've learned in the last two elections is I have no idea what's going to happen because everything I thought was going to happen was wrong. And so I didn't learn it from being a therapist. I learned it from being wrong, really, really wrong. And at least I'm humble enough to say I was really, really wrong. But not only me, most people I listened to were wrong.
But not everyone will admit to being wrong. That's the difference.
Well, then that's what I would call stupidity. I mean, I think intelligence is learning from your mistakes.
Totally. And that's how you learn and you grow, is from your mistakes.
But it's a nice connection there. Of course, I'm trying to make a connection, a segue to dating, but I think that's a nice connection because one of the things I always say about dating, people come to me and say, oh, we had a terrible date and I don't like him and all. And I'm like, right, that's a success. That's what dating is for. You're supposed to, if you figure out that it's not a good match, that's what's supposed to happen. I mean, obviously, eventually you want the right fit, but the whole purpose is to find out, there's this whole idea that you test a metal under stress, that before you build a spaceship or a bit morbid analogy, a submersible, you want to really test it under stress to see how it's going to do at however many miles under the ocean that was. And that's a relationship too. When you're dating, you want really, really hard things to happen. And so if you're on a date and something really challenging happens, that's great, because before you spend your life with somebody, you want really difficult things to happen because they're going to.
Yeah.
And so that's what you hope to happen. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a rotus. It's not all hearts and flowers at the end of the day.
I don't know whose life is. And so
but that's what people expect. A lot of people go out on dates and they expect that. But let me bring you back to one of the points, because as a psychologist who's been working with men for a number of decades, you must have seen a lot of changes about your clients' view love as they transition, through life, whether they're retiring or there's empty nesters. There's so many different transitions that we go through. But I think that sort of, people who are dating slightly older and perhaps haven't dated in this century and they're starting to date again, they're going to, a lot of them, I know with clients that I've worked with, they struggle to date in a grown-up way. They struggle to view love,
nice phrase,
as a 50, 60, 70-year-old. They still thinking of the last time they were on their own, which might be in their teens or their 20s.
Yes.
So there's this transition that some people struggle with. So what advice would you give? I'd love to just thrash that out with you.
Sure, it's a great question. There's a very interesting, sobering, I'll say, graph of happiness, happiness and lifespan. And it's a bit sobering because it's a U-shaped curve. People in their 20s, late teens, early 20s, happiness is way up here. Then you have kids and the graph goes way down. Not because kids make you unhappy. It's just really hard work. So my son and daughter-in-law have twin 4-year-olds, right? Wow. And the last time I visited them, I was there for an hour and I looked at them and I said, oh my God, I've been here an hour and I'm exhausted. Now, I'm older than them, but still, it is high demand. And I remember when my kids went to bed at night, I was like, oh my God, because it's nonstop. It's really, really hard. And it's hard on a relationship. And then you look at the curve, it comes down here. Then the kids get a little older and then they go to school and the curve starts heading up because thank God you go to work, you have a conversation with adults, you go to lunch with an adult, and then the kids, maybe they watch a little TV on their own and they go to a friend's house. It starts. So, love changes over time because there are some years where there's not a lot of adult to adult intimacy. And you kind of have to, you're like a camel. You kind of have to get by on what you stored in the tank. And if there's not a lot in the tank, there's not a lot to go on. So a lot of couples don't manage, particularly if you don't have extended family or a community or religious community. But then you start getting some time back to yourself and hopefully you had enough in the tank. So the answer really changes over time, but we don't help people think about it changing over time. So people think of, like, if you say to people, what's love? They're going to give you an early 20s answer. If you go to a love romantic comedy, you're not going to see people in their 40s. You're going to see people in their early 20s. People come to matchmaking company and they say, what are you looking for? They might be 55. They're giving you an answer about an early 20s. So it'd be nice if we gave people a kind of developmental answer. So now when I see people my age and I see what love is to them, love involves a lot of companionship and hanging out and enjoying time together and community. My birthday last night, I had 30 neighbors and friends. What did we do? We had a potluck. We hang out and talked about neighborhood gossip and children and and health problems, and we had a wonderful time.
And that's what it's all about. But I think when we think about love, I know in my 20s I kind of romanticized
absolutely Great
And
word.
with these rose-tinted glasses, and everything was Romeo and Juliet without someone being killed at the end. So it was all very romantic and fluffy, and violins and fireworks. And I
Let
think
me interrupt for just a quick minute.
this,
How could it not be? Because you're in your 20s, you can only project ahead. You don't know anything. You have
yes,
nothing to do but project ahead. How could you not idealize? You have no experience to talk
I
about.
think you know it all at 20.
It's all you know. You have nothing else to do. If you've seen the first 15 minutes of the movie, what are you going to talk about other than what you think is going to happen?
Very true. Very true. But then the reality, and I think the reality of second time rounders, we're both second time rounders, you and I.
Yeah.
This isn't our first rodeo.
Right.
So I think second time round, I certainly was looking for very different things in my partner
Sure.
than I was back then. But I have a lot of clients that still stick to that same wish list.
Sure. Well, you miss the idealism. You miss the excitement of the naivete. I mean, naivete is a wonderful experience, and people try to hold on to. So I live where I live now 3 years. I live in a beautiful spot, and I try to hold on to that. When I go for a walk in the morning, I try to stop and see it with the eyes I saw it when I first moved here. It's hard to do. It's hard to see it with fresh eyes. We all like that. We want that. But I also want to relax and enjoy the routine and the familiarity so there's a tension there. We're trying to have the best of both.
We are. And I mean, partners that choose each other later in life, they choose them for very different things. Well, they should choose them for very different things. A lot of them aren't looking for that. They're looking for that spark. They're looking for everything else. So we've already spoken about the companionship, but there's an emotional support element. There's that camaraderie, that there's different things that we look for later on in life than we do in our younger years. And, that's something that I wanted to sort of, again, work through. What should people be looking for except the fireworks and the violins?
Well, they are overlapping. They're not mutually exclusive. So people either figure it out over time, or they figure it out if they start later. But one way or the other, they figure out that most of what people do together is spend time together. It's not drama, hopefully. It's conversation over the breakfast table. It's going for a walk together. It's visiting with another couple. It's talking about the children or what we're going to have for, it's pretty everyday stuff. And so when I talk with people who are dating, I mostly ask them about, do you like spending time together? Because more than anything else, that's what you're going to be doing. It needs to be somebody who you enjoy spending time with, who you like sharing your life with.
And I read something the other day, and I love this, and I think it's one of those things I even spoke to my partner about. It's not necessarily who you want to be with, but it's who you can't imagine being without.
Well, that's a lovely way of saying it, and I think there's a reason. Well, there is a reason for that. I think I know what it is, which is every relationship you're in accentuates a different potential aspect of who you are.
Yes.
So I was talking with someone the other day, and I said, when something like my wife is working on a book now that is by far the best thing she's ever written. And I think of that as the best form of job security for me. Like, that her life, that part of her life is going magnificently, is really good for me, that her life's going really well with me. Like, I want her life to be going well with me. I want her to equate being with me with life going well. And I equate being with her with my life going well. There's a very short time period when I, like on my birthday, thought about, wow, everything in my life is going well since I met Michelle. Those thoughts come very quickly together. And again, with dating, you've been with somebody a year or so, and you think, wow, my life's going really, that's not a coincidence. Like, it's going well means my life is going really well since I've met this person.
And I think people like who they are with somebody.
Yes, because you always were, but somehow that's not the part of you. It's the same thing, when you leave home and you go to college and you change. How did you change? Well, that's the person you were at home. And then you got around all these other people and you found out, oh, there's a lot more to me. I didn't know that I had these other parts of myself. I had a dear friend who's just a brilliant, brilliant guy. He grew up in a very small town and he went to Yale. And he tells the story that the first night he was there, he and all his geeky friends stayed up all night long talking. They were all so excited that there were other people like them.
It's a novelty. There's more of us.
So exciting, and they had so much to talk about.
Yeah. And that's how it should be on a date. When you find
Exactly.
someone that resonates with you.
Yes.
You don't want to
feel
stop
yourself.
Yes. Yeah. You don't feel that you're going to be judged or questioned or any of those things. You feel that it's safe to be yourself. There's that element of security and safety.
And let's take that a little further and make it proactive. Not just that it's safe, but that and even beyond welcome, that you're excited, you're excited about that. But not only this part of me that I often am kind of careful because I think you're not going to like it, but oh, you like me more, like that. That's the part of me you really like wow.
Yeah. And I love that. But men are increasingly encountering resistance from mature women who want to retain their own lives and are seeking this living apart together arrangement so that they're keeping their separate residences. How would you advise older single men to understand this shift and what it means for their potential romantic relationships? Because a lot of them are saying, if she doesn't move in with me, we haven't got a proper relationship.
See, I would say put that in the plus column. And I remember distinctly the night before my wife and I moved in together, really having a long sort of conversation with myself, thinking, pros and cons. Like, I was excited about her moving in, and I really liked living on my own. I liked that, just little things that, when I would come home at the end of the day, there's the magazine right where I left it. It's just a little thing, but is pleasurable to me that things in my space were where I left them. And then so I like that was not just oh my God, I need to have somebody to live with, but I want to share my life with somebody. And I like that was something we worked out. And we are not always together. There are things I like doing on my own and things she likes doing on her own. So I would say to a man who is threatened by a woman wanting to have her own life, that he's got some work to do. And to be more comfortable. On the night before my birthday, I went out in my boat and spent the night at anchor in a beautiful place by myself. That's what I wanted to do. And it was just lovely.
Yeah. It doesn't mean because you're in a relationship that you're tied to each other 24/7. There's that element of, I always say to people when I'm working with couples, is you have to maintain your own identity. And the problems in relationships often start when you don't maintain that identity and you feel that the other one is taking away your identity.
Yeah, well, nobody can do that, of course. Do you know the famous Groucho Marx story about that?
No.
Groucho Marx had a quiz show and he's interviewing the guy. The guy says, I have 14 kids. Groucho says, 14 kids? The guy answers, he says, I love my wife. And Groucho says, I love my cigar, but I take it out of my mouth every once in a while. It's very famous old. So yeah, it's like we think love means never wanting to be on your own. It's like, no, they don't have anything to do with each other there.
No, it's two separate things. And would you say that having your own time and space is healthy and something people need to do moving forward?
One of, I think, the articles I've written that it's not a popular article, it's a professional article. Do you have notes that you can put with the show?
Potentially.
Okay,
But
well, there's an
you know,
article.
what I'd say to anybody is write this down. Stop. You have a
Okay,
couple of seconds to go write this down.
there's an article called Privacy and Intimacy Apart, APART, and Apart, or maybe it's Apart and Apart. I've forgotten which way it goes. But if you can't find it,
Yeah.
email me at my website and I will send you the link. So it's about the relationship between privacy and intimacy, suggesting that they are not an antithetical relationship, but they are interdependent, and that intimacy rests on the foundation of privacy, and that without privacy, there is no intimacy. So that if you're dating someone and they say, I can never be alone, you should run away.
Yeah, that's kind of that codependency, isn't it?
Exactly.
That comes in and it becomes stifling and suffocating and
yes,
too much. And I think that's how you know. How do you know if someone has got those tendencies? Is because it's almost as if they're relying on you to feed their need to be happy.
Exactly. When you come home and there's a bunny boiling in a pot on the stove, that's how you know. Right.
I'd like perhaps to give our listeners some tips before the bunny gets into the pot.
Well, it's that, in general, your partner should be excited about anything that adds to your life. If your partner is threatened, if your partner's first reaction is to see it as something that diminishes his or her life, that's a problem. So if I'll give you a silly example because it's about a dog, but it applies. My in-laws used to always, as soon as you walk in the house, they would say, close the door, dog will get out. Finally, one day I said to them, you know what? You dote on this dog. If your dog doesn't want to be here, leave the damn door open and let the dog leave. Why would you want to have a dog who doesn't want to be here? Just leave the door open and find out if the dog's not going anywhere. But you live in fear all the time of the dog leaving. Just leave the door open and stop worrying about it.
So really, we should be doing that with partners as well. Leave the door open, and if they walk out, they walk out. We shouldn't live in fear of them leaving.
Exactly. That's the most important part, is that do you really want to be with somebody and spend all day long worrying about, like, you're good to them, you love them, you treat them well. Do you really want to spend your life worrying about them leaving?
But I think that's the beauty of being the age that we're at.
Yeah.
Is in our younger years, perhaps our anxiety and our lack of wisdom and knowledge, but we thought we knew it all, we'll probably want to hold on to that and hold on to those people for the wrong reasons. But later on in life, especially our second, third time rounders, we kind of think, if you don't want to be with me, don't waste my time.
That's the controversial part, because, about divorce, when someone's partner says, I don't want to be married to you anymore, and the other person is like, don't leave me. I'm like, what, really? You want to stay with somebody who's told you they don't want to be with you? I think you could be a lot happier alone than being married to someone who's saying they don't want to be with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard to imagine being happy, being married to somebody who's already just said, I don't want to be with you.
It's a really valid point.
Yeah.
Very valid point. So let's end on something positive.
Yes.
Stop
raining. How about that?
What's your biggest takeaway for those of us who are, past our childbearing years, going into our second twilight, really, when it comes to love, in particular love, because love is different and love does make the world go round, and doesn't matter what age you are, love is important.
I think it's much, much easier. I think the hardest thing about being married younger is that not all younger married people have children, but most do. And I think that makes it so, first of all, poverty or financial pressure. So you have co-occurring, you're trying to build a career, you don't have any damn money, and you're raising kids, which is trying to do a marriage while all those things are happening is extremely difficult. If you get remarried or married later in life, hopefully you have more financial security. Hopefully your kids are grown and you're older and wiser. It's just much, much easier. Now, then, of course, you have to deal with illness and things like that. But all in all, I just think it's easier.
So do you think people's expectations and their checklists should perhaps be lighter when
They
they're
certainly
old.
can be. You've certainly lived long enough to learn some things that can be really, really helpful.
And we were talking earlier, we will hopefully go into this in our next video that we do. So, we will deeper dive in this, but I'd love to end on this because we started talking about this off camera earlier. And I think, sometimes we, as we're older, we come into this with the superficial checklist that doesn't serve a purpose.
Right.
And people need to start checking in with their feelings and how they feel as to whether someone meets a specific requirement. And I don't want to give too much away now.
Right. But yes, but when we help me remember, it does serve a purpose. It's a distraction. It serves to distract us from the enormous anxiety of dating, but it's counterproductive because you can mistake that for the goal. But it's not the goal. It's really just, a distraction.
Totally.
Yeah.
We're going to end on that. So tune in next time.
Sounds good.